On July 30, 1945, the USS Indianapolis was struck by 2 torpedoes from a Japanese submarine. Within just 12 minutes, the proud and powerful ship sank to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. But that was only the beginning of the story. What happened next was even more horrifying. As the Indianapolis went down, over 900 crew members were left stranded in the open sea, fighting the scorching sun, dehydration, and the relentless threat of sharks. But with no distress call and no survivors to tell the tale, the full story of how the ship met its tragic end remained a mystery. It took 5 long days for the remaining crew to be rescued. Of the 1,196 men who had sailed aboard the ship, only 316 were found alive. The rest were lost, swallowed by the unforgiving waters of the Pacific. The sinking of the USS Indianapolis was one of the most devastating losses of World War II, and the wreckage, which slipped silently beneath the waves, seemed to vanish into history. But despite all the theories, the questions have remained unanswered for decades. What caused the ship to sink so quickly? How did the Indianapolis break apart with such brutal force? And perhaps most mysteriously, where did the ship end up? For over 70 years, the wreckage of the USS Indianapolis was lost to the depths, its final resting place an elusive mystery. But in 2017, a team of explorers set out to answer these questions once and for all. Armed with an advanced underwater drone, equipped with high-definition cameras and sonar, the team descended into the murky depths of the Pacific, more than 18,000 feet below the surface, to find the wreckage. They weren't just looking for the ship, they were searching for answers that had been buried for decades. As the drone made its way into the deep, the team held their breath. The ocean floor was a dark and silent world where few had ventured before. For a moment, there was nothing but blackness on the screen. But then, as the drone's lights cut through the darkness, the first signs of the wreckage began to appear. The team could hardly believe what they were seeing. There it was, the USS Indianapolis, lying broken on the ocean floor. The shape of the ship was unmistakable, even though it had been at the bottom of the ocean for so many years. What followed left the team in stunned silence. The bow of the ship, once a symbol of strength, was mostly intact, but it was buried deep in the silt of the ocean floor. The stern, on the other hand, was in pieces. Twisted metal, broken machinery, and debris scattered across the seabed. The wreck was far more shattered than anyone had imagined, but there was something else, something far more shocking, that the drone's cameras revealed. The footage moved closer to the hull, and then for the first time, the team saw something they hadn't expected. A massive dent in the side of the ship, deep and jagged, as if something had struck it with tremendous force. Could this be the work of the torpedoes, or was something else responsible? The damage looked much more focused, much more precise than what you'd expect from just a torpedo strike. The team couldn't help but wonder, had the Indianapolis been struck by something else before the torpedoes hit? Or perhaps something went wrong after the ship was hit, causing the vessel to break apart with devastating speed. The more they examined the footage, the more the questions piled up. Why had the ship sank so quickly? Why did it break apart in such an unusual way? But the most unsettling discovery came when the drone zoomed in on the wreck's stern. Amidst the twisted metal, something unusual caught the camera's eye, a torpedo, still lodged in the ship's hull. It looked remarkably similar to the ones that had sunk the Indianapolis. The team couldn't believe it. How could an unexploded torpedo still be inside the ship after all these years? Did this weapon play a role in the ship's rapid sinking? Had it detonated before the ship sank, or was it a factor in the speed with which the Indianapolis went down? It seemed impossible that the wreckage could still hold such an important clue. If the torpedo had failed to explode, could this have explained why the ship sank so quickly, catching the crew off guard? But why had the torpedo failed to explode? Was this just another tragic part of the ship's fate, or was there something more to this unexploded weapon than met the eye? The team on the surface felt the weight of the moment. These discoveries weren't just revealing new details about the ship's destruction, they were uncovering a new layer of mystery. The more the drone explored the wreck, the more strange, unexplained pieces of the puzzle came into view. There was one question that loomed over everything. How had the Indianapolis gone down so quickly? Was it simply the torpedo strikes, or was there something far deeper and more mysterious at play? Had the ship been struck by something else, something hidden for decades, or was the real mystery not what sank the ship, but why it sank the way it did? The crew had been left stranded for 5 days, their lives hanging in the balance. Was it only the torpedo that caused the ship to sink, or had the ship been doomed from the moment it was hit, and the torpedo was just the final push? As the drone continued to explore the wreck, the team began to realize that the answers they sought were still hidden in the depths, and the wreckage of the Indianapolis was far more mysterious than anyone had thought. As the underwater drone moved further into the wreckage of the USS Indianapolis, the mystery deepened. The team had already discovered an unexploded torpedo lodged in the hull, an eerie and unexpected clue that seemed to suggest more than just a simple torpedo strike had caused the ship's swift demise. The footage had only scratched the surface. Now, with each new image the drone sent back, it raised even more questions. The drone continued to hover over the stern, which was badly fragmented. The twisted metal was no longer just the result of a sinking. It was as if something had violently torn the ship apart. The pieces of the stern were scattered far and wide across the ocean floor, each one twisted and broken in ways that didn't fit the pattern of a typical shipwreck. The ship had been broken into chunks, but the force that had done this was far greater than anything the crew had anticipated. This was not the kind of destruction you'd expect from a sinking. The ship had been almost disintegrated. The team paused as the camera zoomed in on a large section of the ship's stern. The damage here was severe. Large chunks of metal had been completely sheared off, as if some force had violently cleaved the ship into pieces. The wreckage didn't match the story of a torpedo attack followed by flooding. It suggested something much more extreme. Could it have been a second explosion, one that happened after the initial torpedo strike? Or had the Indianapolis been hit by something else entirely, perhaps a hidden weapon or a malfunction that caused an internal detonation? The drone operator carefully maneuvered the drone through the debris field, searching for more answers. As the camera glided over a pile of wreckage, the team noticed something odd. Among the scattered debris, there was a small section of the hull that appeared to be almost untouched. Despite the chaos surrounding it, this small portion of the ship was remarkably intact. The team was baffled. Why would such a small section remain so undamaged when the rest of the ship had been ripped apart? What could explain the uneven damage to the ship's hull? Had the ship been struck by a second, unforeseen force? Or was this a clue that something inside the ship had caused the damage to be so concentrated in certain areas? The team on the surface couldn't help but feel that they were on the verge of an incredible breakthrough, but the pieces of the puzzle didn't seem to fit. The mystery of why the Indianapolis had sunk so quickly was becoming more complex with every passing moment. The unexploded torpedo was already a major clue, but this uneven damage was raising even more unsettling questions. Was it possible that something inside the ship had contributed to the explosion, maybe an accident or sabotage? Or had the ship been struck by a second torpedo, which had led to this concentrated, violent damage? The drone continued its deep dive, this time focusing on the ship's cargo holds. The hatches, which had been a major point of debate in previous investigations, were now in full view. They appeared secure, undisturbed, and intact. Another shock. In the original reports, experts had blamed the hatch covers for allowing water to flood the ship, gradually sinking it. But what the drone revealed didn't fit this narrative. If the hatch covers were secure and the ship wasn't taking on water through the holds, then what had caused the ship to break apart with such speed? The more the team examined the wreck, the clearer it became. The sinking of the USS Indianapolis was not a simple story of mechanical failure or poor design, but it was what came next that really made the team pause. The drone moved back toward the bow, where more fragments of the ship lay. There, amid the wreckage, the camera captured something chilling: burn marks, as though a fire had burned through the ship before it sank. This discovery seemed almost too strange to be true. Could a fire inside the ship have contributed to its rapid sinking? Had the crew been trapped by a combination of explosions, fire, and flooding? The burn marks raised more questions than they answered. Was the ship struck by something that caused an internal fire, which then led to an explosion? Or was the fire a result of the ship's desperate attempts to stay afloat in the aftermath of the initial attack? The idea that fire might have played a role in the ship's downfall was terrifying. It would explain the sudden and catastrophic nature of the sinking. But how could this fire have started? Was it something that happened after the torpedo strikes, or was it a hidden malfunction that triggered a catastrophic chain of events? As the drone continued to explore the wreck, more fragments of the ship's history began to emerge. The images were clear, and the wreck was revealing its secrets that had remained hidden for decades. The unexploded torpedo, the uneven damage, the mysterious burn marks, and the intact sections of the ship painted a picture of a far more complex disaster than anyone had anticipated. It was no longer just about the torpedo strikes. The Indianapolis's final moments were shaping up to be something far more complicated, something that raised new, unsettling questions about what truly happened that fateful day. Could there have been multiple explosions? Was the fire the result of a failure inside the ship, or was it something external? What role did the unexploded torpedo play in the ship's destruction? As the drone explored deeper into the wreck, it became clearer that the fate of the Indianapolis was far more complicated than anyone had realized. The deeper they went, the more complex the mystery became. The wreckage was speaking, but it was speaking in riddles, and the answers weren't easy to come by. As the underwater drone continued its descent deeper into the wreckage of the USS Indianapolis, the mystery surrounding the ship's final moments only seemed to grow. With each passing minute, the team uncovered more fragments of the puzzle, and yet the answers remained just out of reach. The wreckage of the Indianapolis had been broken apart in a way that defied explanation, and with every new piece of footage, the team was left questioning the story they thought they knew. The unexploded torpedo had been a shocking discovery, but now, as the drone moved across the wreck, the team noticed something else. More signs of devastation, more clues that didn't fit the narrative. The stern, which had been heavily fragmented, showed clear signs of structural damage, but there was something odd about the way it had been broken apart. It wasn't just the force of a torpedo strike or a series of waves. It looked as though something had severed the ship in a way that was more violent than anything the crew could have imagined. The ship's stern had been twisted and torn with brutal force, almost as if it had been struck from within or hit by an external force that was far stronger than a simple attack from a submarine. As the drone moved toward the ship's midsection, the footage revealed more unsettling signs of damage. Large sections of the ship had been bent and broken at unnatural angles. Some areas looked almost as though they had been pulled apart, with twisted beams of steel lying in strange, contorted shapes. It didn't look like natural flooding or even just the impact of a torpedo strike. This was the aftermath of something much more violent, something that had forced the ship apart with terrifying speed. The question began to form in the minds of the team. What had caused the Indianapolis to break apart so violently, so quickly? They had always assumed that the ship had sunk after the torpedoes hit, but the wreckage now seemed to tell a different story. The parts of the ship were scattered far and wide. Some sections, once massive and sturdy, had been violently torn apart, as if the ship had been ripped from the inside out. It was like looking at a puzzle that didn't fit together. Parts of the ship were too far apart, too shattered to have fallen that way naturally. The team paused as the drone's camera zoomed in on another odd detail, a strange, almost out-of-place section of the ship's hull that seemed almost untouched. It was positioned near the areas of extreme damage, but it didn't appear to have suffered the same violent forces. How could this small section of the ship remain so intact while the rest was destroyed? This wasn't just a random detail, it was another piece of the puzzle. Why had this section remained untouched? Was it a clue, or was the ship subjected to an attack that targeted certain parts more than others? The team was left to wonder if this could be a result of an internal failure, something inside the Indianapolis that had caused the wreck to break apart so violently. Could there have been a hidden explosion that no one had accounted for? Could the Indianapolis have been struck by something else after the torpedo attack? Was this a second, unforeseen strike, or was something malfunctioning inside the ship that caused the devastation? As the drone continued to explore the wreck, the focus shifted to the ship's cargo holds, where the flooding had been initially blamed for the ship's sinking. The original investigation pointed to faulty hatch covers, which were said to have allowed water to pour into the ship, gradually sinking it. But as the drone hovered over the cargo holds, the team was stunned. The hatches were still intact, fastened tightly to the deck. They hadn't been ripped off, torn open, or damaged in any way. This was a critical moment. If the hatch covers were secure, how had the ship sunk so quickly? The team was left with a crucial question. What caused the Indianapolis to break apart if the hatches weren't the issue? The footage had revealed something new and unsettling. If the hatch covers were in place and the ship wasn't taking on water through the holds, then there had to be another explanation for the sinking. It was no longer just a question of mechanical failure. Something more had to have caused the Indianapolis to sink so quickly, and the wreckage was revealing its secrets piece by piece. The team felt like they were getting closer to the truth, but then came an even more startling discovery. The drone's camera zoomed in on the burn marks they had noticed earlier. These marks, spread across different sections of the ship, suggested something more than just a simple torpedo strike. The signs pointed to the possibility of fire. But why would fire have broken out inside the ship after it was hit? Could an internal fire have caused the Indianapolis to sink faster? If so, what caused this fire? Could it have been an electrical failure, or did it happen as a result of the initial torpedo strikes? The team was now forced to confront the possibility that the sinking of the USS Indianapolis was far more complex than anyone had thought. Multiple factors could have contributed to the disaster: the initial torpedo strikes, an unexploded weapon, internal failures, and potentially even a fire. Each of these elements raised new questions, but none of them provided a clear answer. Could the Indianapolis have been struck by a second weapon, either from the outside or within? Had an internal explosion made the ship break apart faster than anyone could have imagined? Was it a combination of fire and flooding that caused the crew to be trapped, unable to escape in time? The more the team examined the wreckage, the more it became clear. The Indianapolis had not just sunk due to a single torpedo strike. The ship's final moments were far more complicated and far more tragic than anyone could have known. As the underwater drone finished its investigation, the team finally started piecing together the mystery of the USS Indianapolis. The wreckage was more devastating than they had imagined. The ship wasn't just hit by torpedoes, it was torn apart by something much worse. The unexploded torpedo lodged in the ship's hull was the first big clue. The team was left wondering, could the torpedo's failure to detonate have caused the ship to sink so quickly? Had it played a role in breaking the ship apart? But that wasn't the full story. The damage to the ship was not just from the initial torpedo strikes. The stern was twisted and broken in ways that didn't match the force of a single attack. The ship seemed to have been ripped apart by something far more powerful. The team wondered, could there have been another explosion inside the ship after the torpedoes hit? Or was there a hidden fault in the ship that caused it to break apart under pressure? The drone revealed something strange. Parts of the ship were scattered far from each other, almost as if they had been pulled apart by an external force. Some sections of the ship were almost untouched, while others were destroyed. This uneven damage suggested that something inside the Indianapolis caused the destruction, or maybe it had been struck by a second weapon. The next big discovery was the hatches. In the official report, it was believed that faulty hatches caused the ship to flood, but the drone showed that the hatches were still securely in place, untouched. This raised the question. If the ship wasn't flooding through the hatches, why did it sink so quickly? The team also found burn marks on the wreck, suggesting that a fire might have spread inside the ship. But how could a fire start after the torpedo strikes? Could it have been caused by a mechanical failure, or was it the result of the torpedo explosions? Putting it all together, the team realized that the sinking of the USS Indianapolis was more than just a torpedo strike. It was a series of failures, multiple explosions, maybe a fire, and the ship breaking apart faster than anyone thought. The torpedo strikes likely set off a chain of events that caused the Indianapolis to sink quickly, trapping the crew before they had a chance to react. The USS Indianapolis went down in a way no one expected. It wasn't just a sinking, it was a violent breakdown, caused by a combination of attacks, internal failures, and possibly even fire. The crew's tragedy was far worse than anyone had realized, and the wreckage finally revealed the full, horrifying story. What do you think happened to the USS Indianapolis? Was it just the torpedo strikes, or was there more to the story than we've been told? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking discoveries.